Hi guys, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's tutorial will be on how to draft your basic bodice pattern. So I have my pattern paper, I have my marker pen, my straight ruler, my French curve, my scissors, and my measuring tape. So the fastest way to draft your basic bodice is by joining your front pattern paper to your back pattern paper. And as you can see, I have already marked out my zipper allowance. My zipper allowance is 1.5 inch. I use 1.5 inch for my zipper allowance. So I'll be joining my front pattern paper to the back pattern paper. This line is called the center back, and from the beginning of this point it's called the center front. So I'll go ahead and insert my vertical measurement. I will use this line as my shoulder line. So from my shoulder line to my bust is 10 inches. I'll be marking 10 inches down from my shoulder line. And from my shoulder line to my waist point is 16 inches. I'll be marking 16 inches from my shoulder line, which is also called half length. For my waistline, I will go down by 8 inches for my hip line. So you can also take the measurements from this angle so as to get a straight row. This is 10 inches. This is 16 inches. And you go down to get your hip line 8 inches. Use a straight ruler to connect your lines. Now I'll go ahead and label my line. This is my bust line, this is my waistline, and this is my hip line. After doing this, you go ahead and insert your measurements. My bust is 38 inches. 38 inches divided by 4 is 9.5 inches. So I'll be taking 9.5 inches from my center front. This is 9.5 inches with 2 inches sewing allowance. There's 2 inches sewing allowance. For my waist is 32 inches. 32 inches divided by 4 is 8 inches. I'll be taking 8 inches from my center front and 1 inch for that allowance, so it will make it 9 inches. From here I'll take 2 inches sewing allowance. And for my hip line, my hip is 42 inches. 42 inches divided by 4 is 10.5 inches. This is 10.5 inches. From this point, I'll mark my 2 inches sewing allowance. Go ahead and connect your point to the ruler. Now let's go over to the shoulder. My shoulder is 15 inches. 15 inches divided by 2 is 7.5 inches. But I'll be adding half an inch to my divided measurement to give me 8 inches. And I'll go down with 1 inch for my shoulder slope or slant, anyhow you wish to call it. And I'll be using a neck width of 3.5 inches. After marking 3.5 inches, use your ruler to connect it to this point to get your shoulder slant. I'll also be using a neck depth of 1.5 inch for my back pattern and 4 inches for my front pattern, and I'll use a French curve to connect it. Now this is my neck for the back pattern, and this is my neck for the front pattern. So let's go over to this point. To get the length of my armhole, I'm going to be dividing my bust measurement by 6, and my bust is 38 inches divided by 6 gave me 6, plus 1.5 inches will give me 7.5 inches. So I'll be marking 7.5 inches down from my shoulder slant. This is 7.5 inches, and I'll use my ruler to connect it. You can also insert your bust measurement, which is, mine is 38 inches divided by 4 gave me 9.5 inches. This is 9.5 inches, plus 2 inches sewing allowance. Connect it. So you also connect from this point down. This line will serve as your chest line or your upper bust. So after finding my shoulder, my armhole line, I'm going to be dividing it by 2. I have 7.5 divided by 2 will give me 3.75. So I'll go ahead and mark 3.75 here and go in by 1/2 inch. Then I'll connect this point to this point, and also from here to here to this very point with my French curve. Make sure you get your curve right to give it a very smooth look. So for the back armhole, I'm just going to connect from here where I have my divided measurement to this point for my back armhole. So let's go over to our dart. For the dart, you measure your nipple to nipple measurement, which is also known as your bust span. My bust span is 8 inches. 8 inches divided by 2 will give me 4 inches. So from my center front, I'll mark 4 inches inwards and also add 1/2 inch on both sides. So for your front dart, you take your measurement 1 inch below your bust line. This is 1 inch below your bust line and 2 inches above your hip line. You're gonna go ahead and take your bust span at this point to get a straight rule. This is your bust span 4 inches. This is my bust span 4 inches and 4 inches here. And connect those lines with a straight ruler. After this, you go ahead and form a triangle from connecting this point to this point, this point to this point. To do the same for the other side. After you're through with this, you can go ahead and cut your pattern out using a scissors. For the cutting process, you start with cutting your back pattern first. Cut out your shoulder. Then this is the back armhole. After cutting this, you can go ahead and separate your front pattern from your back pattern and carve out your front neckline. And your front armhole. So guys, after cutting out your front neckline and your front armhole, remember to trim off the excesses on your waist. Remember, I took my waist measurement 32 divided by 4 gave me 8 inches. 8 inches, I added 1 inch for my dart allowance and 2 inches for my sewing allowance. So this is where you will mark and connect this point to your bust line and also connect it to your hip line to give it this hourglass shape. After connecting the 2 points, you trim out your waist excesses. After doing this, you transfer your basic lines to your back measurement or to your back pattern. Transfer all your basic line, your chest line, your bust line, your waistline, and your hip line. You transfer all these basic lines to your back pattern with a slight difference of your dart. For the dart, for your back pattern, the dart, you take the dart 1 inch below your chest line and still maintain 2 inches above your hip line. So guys, this is all for your basic bodice pattern. If this video was helpful, kindly like, share and drop a comment, and also don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching and see you in my next video.